is Tony Kimuli representing Starehe Boys Center Club, and our motion of today will be Kenya has poor management, disaster management and preparedness. Thank you.
Wase. Tunaweza tuwezi.
The Great Debaters Contest has been bringing you mind-blowing debates consistently for 6 seasons, and we are back at it. Welcome to the show. I am Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Today we have two Nairobi giants, Lenana School versus Starehe Boys Center, and the motion is rather timely with Kenya has poor disaster management and preparedness. Mariam, what do you think?
I think it's a very current motion, and it will be a blast to see these two teams debate. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes.
Fuchs. The reaction of the normal Kenyan once they leave a matatu safe and sound. Why? Because we have poor disaster management and preparedness. First of all, what is a disaster? A disaster is a serious disruption of the normal functioning of a community involving widespread human, material, and economic loss. A disaster is a calamity. What else? It is a catastrophe. What else? It is a cataclysm. What else? It is a tragedy. Disasters come in various ways: hydrological disasters, drought and famine; biological disasters, HIV/AIDS; technological disasters or human-engineered disasters, for example, road accidents. What is disaster management? Disaster management is comprehensively minimizing disaster effects. Please note, comprehensively minimizing the disaster effects. Disaster preparedness is increasing the readiness to deal with disasters. Some of the disasters we've experienced: the post-election violence, 2007, 2008. When I remember of this, I remember Kennedy Otieno, the uncle I was named after. I lost my uncle. Why? My uncle, whose hands were chopped off in the 2007-2008 general elections, waited for the government's compensation up to 2014 when he finally lost his life. Yet, Uhuru, the current government, their case was dropped. Why up to now have they not yet compensated all the victims? Not necessarily the victims, but those who are left after the affected people as a result of the post-election violence. That's besides the point. Well, the bad news was I lost my sponsor. No, the bad news was I lost my parents in the 1998 bombing disaster. The worst news was I again lost my only guardian, my uncle. And the good news is I got a sponsor. Not the sponsor you think of, not the sponsor we know. I got a sponsor to cater for my fees. I had a reason to smile. Let us look at the Naivasha traffic ball. The government is spending quite huge amounts of money, taking loans in such a manner that your grandson will owe the government 80,000 shillings to pay. What are we doing with these roads? Are we building roads to the grave? Roads that are not marked well. 43 people were killed. And the good news was I got a sponsor. But yet the worst news was I lost my sponsor in the very accident. The government promised to compensate. Up to now, I have not yet received any compensation, not even a single cent. The current drought, the worst in 60 years, yet the government had been warned about this by the Thomson Reuters in 16th December, on a Tuesday, 2016. I love Kenya, but I also love the truth. Kenya, if the truth hurts, then improve on your reality. Change your reality. When I look back, I'm still impressed that I'm alive in the current Kenya. Thank you.
Opposition, you have 3 minutes to make your opening statements.
Now, I believe that if Romeo and Juliet had Twitter or Facebook, then the world didn't owe Shakespeare a great thank you when they finally found love. It is a fact that we can't stop natural disasters from happening, but we can, through our own ways, acquire knowledge that will help save many lives in the event of a disaster striking. Great debaters, Ochieng Lennox Owino opposing the motion. Ladies and gentlemen, disaster risk in Kenya can be broken down into many forms. Simply, natural hazards such as floods, drought, and famine. Human-induced disasters such as acts of terror, accidents, among others. Kenyans also face the epidemics of emerging and re-emerging diseases such as HIV and cholera. But today, I can proudly say that Kenyans, led by its ever-committed government, have stepped up each and every year to ensure that disasters in Kenya are well prepared for. And in the event of them do happening, they're well managed and mitigated. Think I'm lying? Let me prove it to you. For how can we appreciate light unless we understand darkness? Kenyans, by its government, have put in place multi-sectoral systems, tools, and mechanisms to ensure disaster preparedness and timely response. If I could in any way take you back to 1993, according to the National Disaster Management Policy of Kenya, Final Draft Act of 2010, the government put in place a relief and rehabilitation unit and an emergency drought recovery project to address the results of the droughts in Kenya. This was made even better in 1996 when in its place the Arid Land Resource Management Project was put in place to carry out drought monitoring and management activities. That's a disaster well prepared for. Now to the common Mwananchi, we can't refute the fact that in the past few years, Kenyans have been languishing in agony over the frequent terror attacks. But this great country, being Kenya, with its ever-enterprising citizens, have been able to learn and have put in measures to ensure that these terror attacks don't happen ever again. We have seen drills being performed in our schools to ensure that Kenyans are well versed with what is required to be done during a disaster. Ironically, we have schools with old books stocked in their libraries, yet brand new metal detectors at the gates. We also get to see these common Wananchis coming out in large numbers to support their fellow countrymen and women when disaster strikes. Let's talk of the 2011-2012 drought that was termed to have been the worst drought to have ever struck Kenya in over 60 years. We saw Kenyans come up with the Kenyans for Kenyans initiative that helped restore food stability in the country, something that hadn't been seen in this dark country called Kenya. As I conclude, it will be worth noting that emergency preparedness is a team sport, and preparedness through education is less costly than learning through tragedy. Thank you.
Starehe boys, we hear your rebuttal. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, Romeo. Light, darkness, Romeo and Juliet. Words are being mentioned at random. We are told that a disaster management committee has been formed. What has it done? Except the fact that, of course, it exists. Now, I do not intend to humiliate my country, but one thing I have always told people is the most superficial thing one can do is to paint a beautiful woman. Because I will tell you for a fact, the most beautiful works of art are the portraits of ugly women. So today, we are trying to paint the portrait of a beautiful Kenya, and it is not working for us. I will tell you why. Kenya is reactive and not proactive. Now, look at the following disasters. The locust invasion in Trans Nzoia, the Wagala massacre, and the frequent Budalangi floods. These disasters have one thing in common. They all have occurred at some point in the past before 1998. And the year 1998, we have two major disasters in Kenya. There are the El Nino rains, and then there is the bombing of the US Embassy in Kenya. What happens? There is formation of the National Disaster Operations Center as an act of parliament. Now, this was exactly 34 years after Kenya became a republic. For these 34 years, Kenya had lived without a disaster management system. How could it be that nobody thought about disaster? Then how then could we say that Kenya has good disaster management? Now, when we talk about Kenya, we are talking about you and I. We are talking the government, but it is more than that. I'll tell you something about myself. I am an animal in bed. To be more specific, a koala bear. I can sleep straight for 22 hours and remain awake only for 2 hours. In these 2 hours that I'm awake, I will try to do all the normal things that a normal citizen is supposed to do. I will try to look for food. I will try to provide for my family. This is what the Kenyan citizen has been reduced to. They have misplaced priorities. Look at the Molo fire incident. On the 31st of January 2009, there was a tanker spill, and there was a fire in Molo after the tanker caught an explosion. And in the event of 113 deaths, there were 200 critical injuries. What happened? The onlookers decided to fight over the remnants of spilt oil instead of running for safety. Now, Esther Kidumba, she is not remembered by most of us. She lost her life in the Strathmore University drill. We are told that drills in schools are meant to educate us. But what happens? On the 30th of November 2013, Strathmore organizes a school drill, and it is a terror drill. The first impact that people have, the first impulse they get is, let me call home and bid farewell to my family. And that is what they do. And so in the event, what happens? We lose life in a drill. Now, this is my point. To those of you who are actually dealing with Kenya management of disasters and preparedness, it doesn't matter. Do your best and try to find solace in the fact that no matter how bad you are, you're not useless, because you can still be used as a perfect bad example.
Lenana School, you have 3 minutes for your rebuttal.
Amach George Ochieng from the Lenana School is my correct identification. Today I do stand here so much revered to strongly oppose this motion that Kenya has poor disaster management and preparedness. First thing first, allow me to start with an overdrive. Previously, buildings, institutions, and organizations have been ravaged down by fire. Take the instance of JKIA, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Properties of immense values have been ravaged down. Flowers which are perishable have been destroyed, which were meant for export. But take it from me when I say that what I saw in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport last holiday was worth consideration. The possibility of disaster happening is negligible, thanks to the Building and Construction Act by our Constitution, which implements that for every building to be brought up or be renovated, then there may have to be a recognizable number of fire disaster curbing equipments. Now, from this fact, we can see that the government is battling toothlessly for these disasters. On my second point, we talk about accidents. It is so ironical when we stand in this esteemed podium to talk about accident. Why? Because few yards from this hall, we meet a very conspicuous, remarkable notification, which implies the essence of using the footbridges vis-a-vis roads. What am I trying to say? The Eurocentric views we are having. We are convinced that Africa, we have no hurry. When you ask a person something, time and tide wait for no man. Frankly speaking, Kenyans are taking this disaster to determine fates. Let me prove to you something. Believe me, you, a man in a splendid mindset and tantalizing game plan, cannot make a rare fucking decisions. But I do say today that the introduction of alcohol has made alcohol be out of the recipe of good decision making when it comes to our roads. Thanks to the alcohol, which has been warding off the negligence disease, which is doing us more harm than good. The government, owing to the fact that there's been tremendous increment in road accidents, especially at night, has banned night travel, with an exception, of course, of the licensed public service vehicles. Take the incidents of the Grostic site at the city-to-city bus, which claimed the life of about 42 individuals, and others injured beyond recognition. So I do say today that we Kenyans need to heed by the unsentimental Mugabe when he said that Africans have no time to rest whatsoever, and that even after death, they have to sweat working as ancestors. But sometimes, we don't pay tribute, and that is a disease. And as I said before, my name is Amach George. Hope you can match the motion and be so much credential. Let us inform our fellow citizens of the essence of taking these disasters with determined fate. Thank you.
Thank you to the audience for those questions. The proposers have been asked to give proof and clarify on how the government is currently not prepared enough to handle disasters. And the opposers have been asked the opposites, to give examples of mechanisms which the government has put in place for disaster preparedness. We'll have them respond. Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the greatest disaster facing humankind is the self-thought or the self-assurance that man is what he is not. My name is Eugene Quizera, and I'm not a victim. We think that Kenya has good disaster management and preparedness. It is wrong, and I've been asked to prove that Kenya truly does not have, that Kenya has poor management for disasters and prevention. It has been said by my fellow wise men that the NDOC, National Disaster Operations Center, it was started in 1998. How many disasters have we seen that were well managed? 2007 was after 1998. How many people have been compensated? How many IDPs are still there? Very rhetoric. Poor urban planning is something that shows clearly that Kenya is not prepared for disasters. The Sinai fire 2011, over 100 people died. Why? Because there was this woman and many like her who was waiting in her room, in the darkest corner of her room, waiting for fire brigades to come and rescue her. But God rescued her before they came. She died. Yes, she died. Because Sinai fire occurred in a place where the buildings are so close together that in case of a disaster, ambulance, fire brigades cannot access the place. It's unless these people, this Kenya they are talking about, manages dead bodies and not living Kenyans, that we can accept the fact that it is well prepared. Because that lady now is in heaven, and I hope the fire brigades people will join them if they are lucky enough. Now, my second point, ignorance and lack of awareness. A university student, sharp, supposed to know what you're supposed to do. In class 8, I did a KCP exam. Question 97, the CRE paper, asked me, what are you supposed to do in case of a fire? Well, these things are there, we are being taught, but yet there's somebody jumping out of a window when he's told there's a fire. That is ignorance, and that is lack of proper awareness. This is not how Kenyans should prepare and manage these disasters. We can see ignorance from the fact that Westgate attack, the Israeli government, a fact approved by the NIS, National Intelligence Service of Kenya. The Israeli government warned Kenya that an Israeli-owned business was to be attacked either between 4th and 28th September. But guess what? They did nothing, and 60 people died, and there was a lot of loss of property. Lucius Lyon said, it's hard to see yourself. It's hard to see the frame when you're in the picture. You are in the picture of ignorance. That's why you can't see that frame of ignorance that you are safe, yet you are not. Thank you.
Lenana, you have 3 minutes to respond.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Snow White, the princess herself, couldn't charm an answer from the magic mirror. That's all fantasy, because I, Boniface Umina, hold answers to those who dare question our opposers. Now, you've asked about the drought issue. When it's clearly noted that the government is sending relief food to people of Northeastern currently facing the drought issue. Students who previously couldn't learn because of hunger due to the drought are getting the food they need and actually concentrating in class. The annual hunger walk, another initiative. Well, if you haven't heard about this, you must have been under a rock or have had enough to eat, because the annual hunger walk has helped to raise enough food to aid these people in the Northeastern who are facing the drought issue. Now, the European Union and the national government have launched a 42 million shilling project to rehabilitate the Mount Elgon and Cherangani water towers. This we get from the standard paper of February 10th, 2017. Furthermore, the cabinet has approved the hosting of the 56th session of the Asian African Legal Consultative Organization. This will provide the best opportunity to lobby resolutions to challenges unique to Kenya. Threats such as terrorism and violent extremism. We heard of the Nyumba Kumi initiative launched by our government to ensure that we know who we live next to be able to look out for terrorism or violent extremism points, As I conclude, I'd like to say that Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is our government expected to deal with these issues overnight. So I feel sad and I beg that we as Kenyans do employ patriotism as a Kenyan wananchi. Trust in Kenya. Trust in our government and its people to be able to deal with these issues, prepare for disaster and manage them well. Thank you.
We'll hear closing statements now. Starehe, you have 1 minute.
With my specs on and my specs off, I still don't see their point. This is it. Now, it's as clear as day that yes, Kenya has faced tragedies. I love Kenya, but like the lion said, I love truth more. Now, I understand that Kenya has swum the roughest floods, traveled the dusty paths of drought, and walked on the ruins of terror, and has arrived at the celestial city, where it has shared a warm meal with its family of happy Kenyans. Well, that meal was poisoned. Poisoned by the thought that you are safe, by the thought that you have been prepared for in case of a disaster, but you have not been prepared for. This is the fact. Mirror, mirror, who is the fairest of them all? Well, the mirror says, he who cares for Kenya, and I'm Eugene Kwizera, I care for Kenya.
Lenana School, you have a minute for your closing submission.
Now, as Post Malone once said, he's sourcing and he does it often. We as the debaters do our research and we do it often. Now, the first proposer talked about comprehensively managing the disasters in our country. A bit of research. According to the 2016 World Risk Report, Kenya was previously ranked with a disaster risk of 7.18% in 2012. 2013, it decreased to 7.08%. And finally, in 2016, 6.77%. Now, if that isn't comprehensive, I don't know what is. Now, as we enter 2017, with all measures put up, I, as a Kenyan, have a lot of faith in my government to manage future disasters. How about you? Do you trust in Kenya? You live in it. Food for thought.
Kennedy, you know how to bond with the audience, which is commendable. You know, whether it's true or it's not true, but I think you took me through a journey, a personal journey, and it was quite emotional. And you've always talked about using emotional appeal in terms of presentation. At one point, I thought this is a very difficult motion. We are not going to debate it well. But I was surprised that we were able to debate well. You are quite eloquent, and you are very fluent in terms of your submissions. Roland, again, does not disappoint. One thing that helped you as a team is the use of examples. I got to hear so many examples in Kenya of the fact that Kenya, we are not prepared in order to address disasters that happen in our country. Budalangi, for example, the Garissa massacre was mentioned, Mall of Fire, you know. These things make us almost feel like crying because we lost lives in the process. Brilliant, and I think the team is just an awesome team.
To Lenana, I felt like Lennox was an eloquent speaker. He gave very good examples, talk of the drills and metal detectors, talked of Kenyans for Kenya. Amachi, the only thing I didn't understand is when you were talking about KQ. I didn't get what you wanted to say. But I liked about the footbridge and also the thing to do with alcohol blow and night travel. When it came to bonfires, I don't have anything to say.
Starehe tried to prove to us, and I think they somehow convinced me that most of the time we tend to be proactive rather than, we tend to be reactive rather than proactive. It's like the government keeps on, the country keeps on reacting to disasters. Lenana, on the other hand, you came up strongly and tried to tell us the measures that have been put in place. And you actually identified a few, like in road transport, alcohol blow, and regulations that have been put in place, the metal detectors, the building industry. I think we did some good job. The only thing I can say, may the best team win.
Starehe Boys Center and Lenana School. Lenana School was awarded 73%. Please give them a round of applause. A very high score. Starehe Boys Center, you were awarded 77%. You are our winners for the debate.
Bravo, and a job very well done to Lenana School. And of course, congratulations to our host school, Starehe Boys Center. Thank you for watching, and keep in touch with us on Twitter at Great Debaters EA, and find our videos on YouTube as well. I have been your host, Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Yumbok. Catch you next time.